ASMR, an acronym for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, is a tingling sensation that typically begins at the scalp and moves down the neck and spine. ASMR is also sometimes referred to as brain massage, tingling, or a host of other creative names. Regardless of what you choose to call it, there's no denying its popularity with millions of videos on YouTube, alone garnering tens of millions of views. So, what exactly is ASMR, and why do so many people love it? It all starts with a trigger, something that elicits a response in those who are susceptible to ASMR. And there are many different things that can trigger ASMR. Common triggers include whispering, tapping, scratching, crinkling, personal attention, role-playing, and many more. For instance, some people only experience ASMR when they hear a specific sound, like the crinkling of tissue paper, while others might experience it when they watch someone complete a highly focused task, like folding laundry or tying a shoelace. And then there are those who only get it when watching a specific type of person, such as an attractive woman or a person in a uniform. That being said, most ASMR enthusiasts agree that the number one ASMR trigger of all time is whispering. This makes sense considering that humans evolved to pay close attention to soft, gentle sounds, especially if they were made by another human being. In fact, studies show that we can detect extremely faint sounds made by other people from up to 10 miles away. And these sounds don't need to be particularly meaningful or complex either. All that matters is that they come from another person. That's why a simple whisper can be enough to elicit an ASMR response in some people. Our brains are literally programmed to pay attention to whispers because they could signal something important being said by another human. Now, as far as why people love ASMR, one leading hypothesis suggests that it has to do with our response to social cues. When our ancestors first began living in groups, it was essential that they learn to read subtle social cues. After all, being rejected by one's group meant almost certain death. As a result, our brains evolved to be hyper-attuned to anything that might signal rejection or danger. Today, this manifests itself in our fascination with ASMR. Specifically, the triggers that evoke ASMR might just be cues that tell us someone is about to approach us and potentially interact with us. When this happens, our brains release a surge of dopamine, the feel-good neurotransmitter, which causes us to feel relaxed and at ease. This explains why so many people report feeling calm and focused after experiencing ASMR. Another explanation for why ASMR might feel so good is based on the neurological response to touch. You see, many of the triggers that cause ASMR, such as tapping, scratching, and crinkling, mimic the sensation of being touched. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that people who enjoy ASMR are actually getting some sort of sexual gratification. Instead, it may simply mean that their brains are responding to the auditory cues as if they were actual physical stimuli. In support of this theory, one study found that ASMR activates the same regions of the brain that are responsible for processing actual touch. However, not everyone is a fan of ASMR. In fact, some people actively try to avoid it. If you happen to be one of these people, it might just mean that you're subconsciously associating the triggers with a negative experience. This is known as classical conditioning, and it's the same psychological phenomenon that's responsible for phobias and other learned fears. For example, if you were ever bitten by a dog, you might now associate all dogs with pain and fear, even though logically you know that not all dogs are dangerous. Similarly, if you've had a bad experience that was triggered by a specific sound or action, you might now associate that trigger with danger, which prevents you from ever experiencing ASMR. So how can you overcome this learned fear of ASMR? One way is through systematic desensitization, which involves gradually exposing yourself to the trigger in a safe and controlled environment. Another option is to use positive reinforcement, which means pairing the trigger with something that you enjoy. For example, if you hate the sound of fingernails on a chalkboard, you might try listening to the sound while watching your favorite TV show. Over time, this should help you unassociate the trigger with whatever negative experience you've had in the past. Of course, this will take time and effort, but it might be worth it if you want to experience the alleged benefits of ASMR. Some people even claim that ASMR can help with certain medical conditions. For example, there's anecdotal evidence that ASMR can help relieve tension headaches, reduce stress and anxiety, and promote better sleep. However, it's important to note that none of these claims have been scientifically proven. But there is one condition that has been linked to ASMR, and that's autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. Studies have found that many individuals with ASD are either highly sensitive to certain triggers or completely insensitive to them. Some researchers believe that this is due to differences in how the brain processes sensory input. Others believe that people with ASD might be more likely to seek out ASMR because it can help them cope with the social and emotional challenges of everyday life. Whichever the case may be, ASMR does seem to be more common among people with ASD than in the general population. But perhaps the greatest mystery surrounding ASMR is still how so few people experience it. Like we said earlier, millions of videos featuring ASMR triggers have racked up tens of millions of views on YouTube alone. And yet, research suggests that only about 3 or 4 of 1% of the population doesn't experience ASMR. There are several theories trying to explain this discrepancy. One is that ASMR is actually a real physiological response, but not everyone is susceptible to it for reasons that we don't yet understand. Another theory is that ASMR is entirely subjective, and that what one person perceives as a pleasurable tingling sensation might be perceived as nothing more than a weird static-like noise by someone else. In other words, ASMR might just be a combination of auditory hallucinations and imagined sensations. If this is the case, then it would make sense why so few people experience ASMR. It's not that they don't have access to the right triggers. It's that their brains aren't wired to respond to those triggers in the same way. So why do so many people insist that they experience an actual tingling sensation when they hear a whisper or feel a gentle breeze on their skin? Well, it could be because our brains are essentially trying to make sense of the ambiguous stimuli. That is, when we hear a whisper or feel a gentle breeze, our brains are constantly trying to figure out what it means. Is someone trying to talk to me? Is this breeze part of a larger weather system that I need to be aware of? Because our brains don't get clear answers to these questions, they fill in the blanks with whatever meaning they deem appropriate. And for some people, that meaning is a tingling sensation. Of course, this is just one possible explanation for ASMR. And until more research is conducted, we may never fully understand why some people experience it and others don't. What do you think? Do you experience ASMR? If so, what triggers it for you? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click the like button and share it with a friend. Subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell icon for more content like this. Thanks for watching.